All right, guys, so you built the motor and your builder handed you the dyno sheet and you're proud of it. Well, let me share something with you. Let's keep your builder honest. If your builder handed you a dyno sheet and it doesn't say SAE in the corner, then I would go back and question why he didn't hand you the proper numbers. SAE versus STD. That's what we're going to be doing today. Dyno sheets comparing SAE versus STD and what's the difference.
Back down like my mule, roads clear, tank full, kick back with my feet up. I twist back and I speed up. Left lane, pipe full, move fast when it's got more. Clear skies. Thank you, Lord, I'm gliding. Perfect day for riding. 500 in front of me and I'm right here where I want to be. It's a beautiful day and I thank God for it all. I'm traveling tall.
So to start it off, we're going to talk about the history of correction factors and why they have them. You've met Adam before. This is Adam from Zippers Performance. He's the senior developer of the Redshift Cam.
The reason why we have correction factors on a dyno is pretty simple. I can run the same motorcycle today in today's atmospheric conditions, and I can run it somewhere else and it'll produce a different number, right? And it's purely because of the air coming in, it's the temperature, it's the humidity, it's the elevation that you're at.
Yeah, because we're at a lower sea level and then you could be in Colorado with a,
We're at like 100-foot elevation right now. And we want to be able to accurately compare this motorcycle to one in Denver that's 1 mile up, and we also want to be able to compare it to someone in, Florida or California or wherever you may be. And the only way to do this is with a correction factor, and that takes into account all of those variables that alter your power. So if you're running this on a very cold, dense air day, it's going to correct the number down a little bit because there's a standard number that it's trying to compare at. If it's a super hot and humid day, it may actually correct it up. The correction factors, there's quite a few different ones, and as time has gone on, they have improved. SAE is what is the current standard from the Society of Automotive Engineers. STD was actually a very short-lived standard. It was only in existence for a couple of years, and after it got put out by the SAE, it was realized that it was missing a variable and that it was not including all the atmospheric conditions. And because of that, the numbers were a little bit higher than what they expected. So STD was revised and replaced by the SAE standard. So you can go and look on Google and say SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers versus STD. You'll find all this info. It's been out there since the 90s.
Right.
So the STD standard is just an out-of-date correction factor.
So why would someone who's building motors, and I'm not going to ask Adam, I'm asking you guys, why would someone who's building motors and presenting a dyno sheet to a customer, why would they use an outdated correction factor when the industry has adopted SAE and everyone from automotive to whatever has adopted SAE, but people are still presenting dyno sheets to the consumer STD? Would you trust someone that's doing things like that? Is it to deceive? Is it just to give you that big number for bragging rights? But the truth is, you're going to be, when someone looks at your dyno sheet and they look in the corner, because it'll say it right in the top right-hand corner right here. When they look at your dyno sheet, they're going to see if it's SAE and STD, and if it's STD and it's making this big number, then it's an inflated number. No one's going to take that serious. There's a lot of great builders out there making great motors that will show it in SAE, but then you have some guys who are looking to inflate their numbers and they'll put it in STD. I'm not sure that I would want to trust anybody who's inflating my numbers on my dyno, because if they're lying about that, then what else are they lying about?
Well, I will make this statement. So This was changed in 1992. I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of the people tuning Harleys on dynos today weren't tuning in the 90s. They were not tuning in 1992.
No.
So they didn't know that this changed. You know, if I started at a company and I had 1,000 dyno graphs in the library and they were all done by STD, that's probably what I would do, because that would be following the format of what was done.
Right.
Does it make it correct? No, because it is an out-of-date correction factor.
Right.
So what is truly the difference? Why do we even talk about this? This motorcycle in SAE just put down 177 rear wheel horsepower. And by the way, all you have to do is change the correction factor in the dyno software.
Click of the button.
Click of the button.
Keep
and
them
it
honest,
shows you.
guys. Keep them honest.
So when you're told that you're given STD and you can have SAE, it's right here.
Oh my goodness,
So
I just picked up some more horsepower.
you just made 5 horsepower and 5 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah.
That's the easiest 5 horsepower I've ever made.
Yeah, exactly. With a click of the button.
So, but that's the difference. So it just gave, and again, this is not personal opinion. You can do your own research. This has been fought on all the car forums for years. To be honest with you, I challenge DynoJet. Why do you have STD in here if it's out of date? You know, there's other correction factors in here. JIS. That's something that's very commonly used in Europe.
Yeah, I'm
right?
curious now. Let's see what.
That's wonderful. That's not what I compare to here. So
It's kind of
and
close.
that's actually almost exactly the same
Yeah.
thing as SAE, 177 horsepower.
Yeah.
If it's off, it's only difference by about a half a horsepower, half a foot-pound at this level.
But that's not the industry standard in the United States.
But that's the industry standard elsewhere.
Okay.
So, but going back, just to show how simple it is, you just bounce back and forth.
Right.
So SAE is what we use. If you look, I look at who's the biggest company? Harley-Davidson. What do they publish? They don't actually state SAE, but they actually call out the appropriate dyno. It is the SAE standard, but they're calling it out even more finite by the J number, which is the revision number. So Harley-Davidson publishes in SAE.
Yeah.
To me, all of the top tier aftermarkets as well do SAE like we do. If I have to follow someone, I'm going to follow Harley-Davidson.
So guys, here's a bonus. We're gonna throw this bonus in here. Crank horsepower versus rear wheel horsepower. There's some pretty big numbers that people publish. Usually you see that for car manufacturers, they will put the horsepower measured at the crank versus the horsepower measured at the rear wheels. And motorcycle manufacturers do that as well too. And that is kind of industry standard. People accept that.
Yeah.
So they're not being deceitful when they do that. The aftermarket people, we measure by the rear wheel horsepower, rear wheel torque. And it's a different number. If you see the horsepower measured at the crank, you're going to get a higher number, right?
Absolutely. You know, usually in cars, I think 15%, and I know it's changed over time, but anywhere from 10 to 20% driveline loss. So you're always going to show a higher number when you're measuring it just at the crankshaft. I'll give you the perfect example I know off the top of my head. So I have a Harley-Davidson Pan America Special.
Yep.
Awesome motorcycle.
He loves that motorcycle.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's quoted everywhere as 150 horsepower. I put that on this dyno right here, and bone stock, it made 138 rear wheel horsepower.
Which is pretty close.
I
yeah.
thought was impressive.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. It tells me that that is a very advanced and modern driveline with, you know, the more advanced, the more efficient it is. So the less power you're losing. But that's the perfect one. 150 is not 150 on the dyno.
Right.
So as an aftermarket, if you're coming in and making changes, you're starting with that lower number. So if you ever see a baseline, like we've compared, you know, where you started to where you are today,
Yeah.
the baseline's at the rear, it's going to show less power than what you were told on the website when you purchased the motorcycle.
Right.
It is not a lie. It is two different points of measurement.
And like I said, it's not like the SAE STD thing where people are trying to deceive you. That's the industry standard. All manufacturers do that.
Right.
But the difference between, because I'm not, just pick any motorcycle, people will say, well, this bike makes 145 horsepower. And then technically, well, I'll use one. BMW K1600 makes around 160 horsepower from the factory, but that's not at the rear wheel. It makes considerably less at the rear wheel, and I don't know that number off the top of my head, but you can see that. I might put it in the description below. But anyway, yes, it's a huge difference between measuring it at the crank and measuring it at the rear wheel. When we're talking in the aftermarket world, we're measuring at the rear wheel in SAE, not STD. So that's it. You got anything to add? We're gonna.
I do want to point out that they're both good and correct measurements. Doing it at the crank, as long as you're publishing it at the crank, or
Right.
doing it at the wheel.
Right.
Because of the prevalence of a chassis dyno, this is how the majority of people operate. Is we're going to see what it does at the rear wheel before the job is complete, not just what the engine does. So they're both very valid, but this is what you're going to see for the most part outside of that primary manufacturer.
I don't even know how to measure it at the crank, but now I'm curious. I'm like, what's this thing making at the crank? If it's making 177 at the rear wheel, it must be making a whole lot at the crank. But
It's it's not something that I have the ability to measure here, but it's probably around 200 at the crank.
yeah.
So
All right. Okay, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, the video SAE versus STD, and we're trying to help you. People spending a whole lot of money and a lot of time and getting builds for their Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and we want to make sure that we're keeping the builders honest and they're not just telling you things that you want to hear. I make videos like this to help the consumer. That's what it's all about. If you're interested in buying some performance parts for your Harley-Davidson motorcycle, make sure you give Zippers Performance a call. There will be some new products that just got released that you'll see on this bike, or you may have already seen on this bike. But check out Zippers Performance. You can go to zippersperformance.com, or you can give them a call. And I don't know the number, but I will put it in the description section below. All right, guys. Thank you, Adam.
thank you.
I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like it, please subscribe. Again, like, share, and subscribe. Keep gliding. As always, have a blessed day.